light, dim the streets in moonlight bright. We dissect the cinematic art, real by real we pull apart.
Hey there, welcome back to Real Talk. I'm your host Josh, and today we're diving into a film that's not just iconic, it's totally timeless. That's right, we're talking about Clueless. Directed by the brilliant Amy Heckerling and released in 1995, Clueless is a coming-of-age comedy that took the world by storm with its sharp humor, memorable fashion, and a protagonist who's equal parts lovable and clueless. Now, if you haven't seen it yet, here's a quick pitch. Imagine Jane Austen's Emma, but instead of 19th century England, we're in a sun-soaked, high-fashion Beverly Hills high school. Our heroine, Cher, is a wealthy, good-hearted teen who might think she has all the answers, but soon discovers there's a lot more to life than matchmaking, makeover montages, and credit card limits. This episode, as you know, is part of our series of coming-of-age films directed by women, and let's be real, Amy Heckerling didn't just make a movie, she set the gold standard for the genre. Clueless isn't just funny and stylish, it's smart, satirical, and so much deeper than it seems at first glance. Today, we'll break it all down, how Clueless fits into the world of coming-of-age stories, its influence as a film directed by a woman, and the cultural legacy it's left behind. Oh, and you know I'll be diving into Cher's iconic plaid outfit, because how could I not? So grab your favorite 90s snack, settle in, and let's talk about why Clueless is still totally important almost 30 years later. I promise, this is going to be fun. Alright, let's dive right into the brains behind Clueless, Amy Heckerling. If you're into movies about teenagers that feel real, hilarious, and timeless, well, Heckerling is your person. Before she gave us Cher in her iconic plaid suit, Amy had already proven she had a gift for tapping into youth culture. I mean, Fast Times at Ridgemont High is an absolute classic. It was the movie that gave us Sean Penn as Spicoli and some of the most relatable teen moments ever put on film. Then she went on to direct Look Who's Talking, which is a completely different vibe, but equally memorable. Who didn't love those talking babies? At least the first time around. So by the time Clueless came along in 1995, Heckerling wasn't just any filmmaker. She was someone who really understood how to balance humor, heart, and a sharp sense of observation. But here's what makes her story even cooler. Amy grew up in New York City, totally different from the sunny, sprawling Beverly Hills world of Clueless. Her fascination with the LA lifestyle started when she moved to California and began observing the teenagers around her. Apparently, she was struck by how these kids expressed themselves, not just in what they said, but how they dressed, how they carried themselves, and even the way they interacted with their parents. It was a world that seemed larger than life, almost like a movie itself. And she had this idea to take all that, this colorful, exaggerated world of wealthy Beverly Hills teens, and ground it in something familiar and timeless. Enter Jane Austen's Emma. The idea to modernize Emma was genius, right? I mean, it gave Clueless this great structure while letting Heckerling put her own spin on it. She wanted to tell a story about a girl who seems shallow and self-absorbed, but is actually really kind-hearted and on her own journey of self-discovery. And let's be honest, she really nailed it. Now, let's zoom out and talk about what was happening in film around this time. The mid-90s were such a turning point. Indie movies were really having a major moment. Think Tarantino, Kevin Smith, and Richard Linklater. So there was this big focus on fresh voices and unique perspectives. At the same time, women filmmakers like Heckerling were really starting to try to make waves. And sure, Hollywood was still a boys' club, and honestly, in some ways, it still is. But at the time, directors like Nora Ephron, Penny Marshall, and Catherine Bigelow were proving that women could deliver box office hits and critical darlings. Clueless dropped right into the cultural sweet spot. It was smart, funny, and absolutely feminine at a time when a lot of teen movies were more about crude jokes and male-centric stories. Heckerling brought something fresh to the table, a movie that celebrated girls, their friendships, and even their so-called flaws. And let's not forget the fashion. The 90s were all about pushing boundaries, grunge was huge, and indie styles were popping off. Then you had Clueless, which brought this ultra-glamorous, over-the-top aesthetic that somehow felt totally authentic. This movie was just a total vibe. So against all the trends, indie cinema, a push for diversity in storytelling, and women finding their voices behind the camera, Clueless came along and said, yeah, we can do that, but we're going to make it fun, fabulous, and ridiculously quotable too. And the world was like, as if we'd ever doubt you, Amy. Alright, next up, the story and the characters of Clueless. Because honestly, they're what make the film so endlessly rewatchable. At the center of it all is Cher Horowitz, played to perfection by young Alicia Silverstone. Cher is like the queen bee of Beverly Hills High. She's wealthy, stylish, and always the center of attention. But I think what's interesting about Cher is that she's not your typical mean girl. She's well-meaning, generous, and she genuinely wants to help those around her. The problem? She's also hilariously oblivious and a bit self-absorbed, which makes for some of the best comedic moments in the movie. Now, Cher starts the film thinking she's got this all figured out. Her life, her friends' lives, everyone's lives. She's a pro at matchmaking and makeovers. But as the story unfolds, she realizes that her attempts to fix things don't always go as planned. Whether it's setting up her teachers or giving her new friend Ty a complete personality overhaul, her well-intentioned meddling leads to a lot of awkward, funny, and occasionally really heartwarming moments. By the end, Cher grows in a way that feels earned. She starts to see the world beyond her bubble and realizes that sometimes the person who needs the biggest makeover is herself. And speaking of her world, let's talk about the supporting cast, because they're just as iconic as Cher. First, we have Dion, Cher's equally stylish and sharp-tongued best friend, played by Stacey Dash. Dion is always by Cher's side, whether they're strategizing their next move or just hanging out in the hallways. Her relationship with her boyfriend Murray, played by Donald Faison, adds another layer of humor. Their playful bickering is pure gold. Then there's Ty, the clueless new girl, played by Brittany Murphy. Ty's transformation from awkward and unpolished to confident social climber is both hilarious and a little bittersweet. She's kind of the catalyst for Cher's realization that maybe her matchmaking and makeover magic aren't always what people need. Brittany Murphy brought such charm and vulnerability to Ty, it's really impossible not to root for her. And when she's trying to one-up Cher, that's when it's the funniest. And of course, we can't forget Josh, played by a young Paul Rudd. Josh is Cher's ex-stepbrother. But don't worry, the movie makes it work. He's the total opposite of Cher. Socially conscious, grounded, and a bit of a smarty pants. He's always teasing Cher about her shallow ways. But you can tell it comes from a place of affection. Their banter is so much fun, and watching their relationship evolve from sibling-like squabbles to romantic sparks is one of the sweetest parts of the movie. Also, can we just take a moment to appreciate how Paul Rudd has not aged a day since this movie? It's honestly getting suspicious at this point. But seriously, I think what really sets these characters apart is how fully realized they are. On the surface, they fit into the high school archetypes: the queen bee, the new girl, the brooding intellectual. But they all have quirks and layers, and that makes them feel real. And Heckerling's script is so sharp and insightful, and her perspective as a female writer-director shines through. Cher isn't punished for being girly or loving fashion. In fact, those traits are celebrated. She's allowed to grow and learn without losing who she is. And let's not forget the dialogue. I mean, the one-liners in this movie are pretty legendary. From "as if" to "you're a virgin who can't drive." Every line feels like it was crafted to be quoted forever. These characters don't just exist in the world of Clueless. They're a part of pop culture. And I think that's the real testament to how memorable and relatable they are. All right, so let's dig into the themes and symbolism from Clueless, because there's so much more going on beneath the glossy surface of this film, and I think that's part of what makes it so special. Because sure, on the surface, it's super fun, teen comedy with catchy one-liners and some amazing wardrobes, but there's a lot of depth woven into this story. Let's start with the obvious. Clueless is a coming-of-age story. It's about Cher growing up and figuring out who she really is. And what's interesting is that Cher isn't your typical high school protagonist. She's not the underdog trying to fit in, or the quirky outsider who's misunderstood. She's the queen bee, rich, popular, confident. And she starts the film thinking she's got it all figured out. But as we watch her navigate relationships, friendships, and even her own self-worth, we realize that she's just as clueless as anyone else. And that leads me to one of the film's biggest themes: identity and self-discovery. Cher begins the movie thinking her worth comes from her ability to control and fix things, whether it's her friends, her grades, or her new friend, the new girl, Ty. She's used to orchestrating everything to perfection, much like her color-coordinated wardrobe. But as the story unfolds, Cher starts to see the cracks in that perfect facade. She realizes that maybe she doesn't have all the answers. And that's okay. It's a really relatable journey. That moment when you realize you don't have to have it all together all the time. And speaking of Ty, let's talk about the whole makeover subplot. On the surface, it's a fun, lighthearted part of the film. Who doesn't love a good makeover montage, right? But it's also saying something deeper about conformity and the pressures of fitting in. Cher genuinely believes she's helping Ty by turning her into someone more acceptable to the popular crowd. But in doing so, she unintentionally erases what makes Ty unique. It's only later, when Ty starts to come into her own, and Cher reflects on her own insecurities, that she realizes being cool isn't everything. Now let's pivot to class and privilege, which are also all over this movie. I mean, the entire setting of Beverly Hills practically screams privilege. From the gigantic houses to the designer clothes, Clueless leans into this world of excess and wealth. But it's not just there for decoration, it's part of the story. Cher's privilege allows her to float through life in a way that others can't. She can debate her way to better grades, shop her way out of a bad mood, and organize charity events without ever really understanding what charity means. But over time, she starts to see that her privilege doesn't automatically make her a good person. She has to put in the work to be more empathetic and aware of the people around her. Now let's talk about the fashion for a second, because it is such a huge part of the film. Cher's wardrobe is iconic: the yellow plaid suit, the sheer white shirt with the black miniskirt, the endless parade of perfectly styled outfits. It's more than just eye candy. Her clothes are an extension of her personality and her need for control. Everything is curated, planned, and flawless, just like Cher tries to be. But as she grows, you start to see moments where she lets her guard down. It's subtle, but it's there. And it's not just Cher's wardrobe that's symbolic. The way all the characters dress says something about who they are. Dion's bold, daring outfits reflect her confidence and willingness to stand out. Ty's baggy clothes at the start of the film show how out of place she feels, and as she gains confidence, her style shifts. Even Josh, with his casual, practical outfits, contrasts sharply with Cher's designer looks, emphasizing how grounded and down-to-earth he is compared to her world of excess. Now, one of the things I love most about Clueless is how it handles all of this with humor and heart. The film is definitely satirical. It pokes fun at the absurdities of wealth, privilege, and teenage drama. But none of it ever feels mean-spirited. Cher is a great example of this. She's flawed, sure, but the movie never punishes her for being herself. It celebrates instead her growth while still letting her be the same lovable, slightly self-absorbed person we met at the start. And of course, you can't forget the setting itself, because Beverly Hills is almost like its own character in the movie. The mansions, the malls, and the perfectly manicured lawns, they all contribute to this world that feels both aspirational and totally ridiculous. I mean, it's the perfect backdrop for a story about a girl who has everything, but still has so much to learn. So yeah, Clueless is hilarious and fun, but it's also rich with meaning. This is a film that manages to be both lighthearted and deeply insightful, which is why I think it still resonates with audiences today. This is a reminder that no matter how polished or perfect someone seems on the outside, they're probably still figuring it out on the inside. And that's okay, because aren't we all? When Clueless hit theaters in the summer of '95, it didn't just land, it exploded. Critics were immediately taken by its razor-sharp wit, its refreshing take on the teen comedy, and Amy Heckerling's clever, distinctive voice as both writer and director. At the same time, audiences fell head over designer heels for Cher and her world, making the film an instant cultural touchstone. I think what made Clueless such a hit right out of the gate was how effortlessly it balanced being super specific but still universally relatable. It was hyper-focused in a way that's very particular corner of the world sees things. Beverly Hills, full of wealth, privilege, the hyper-curated outfits. But somehow it still managed to speak to just about anyone who's ever been a teenager. Whether you were living in the Midwest or the East Coast or halfway across the globe, Cher's journey of self-discovery and figuring out how to be a better version of herself struck a chord. And then there's the humor. The script was so fresh, so quotable, critics and fans alike were quoting the lines within weeks of its release. I mean, those phrases in a time before memes practically became part of the 90s lexicon. You couldn't go to school or turn on the TV without hearing somebody referencing Clueless. I was 16 when the movie came out, and that is how people started talking almost immediately. And then there's the fashion. Costume designer Mona May created these iconic, larger-than-life looks that really define 90s style. Cher's yellow plaid suit is still influencing runways and Halloween costumes 30 years later. The film not only mirrored the trends of its time, but also set them, which isn't something every movie can claim. Now, let's take a moment to talk about the movie's impact beyond its humor and fashion. For one, It absolutely opened the door for more female-driven comedies. Up until then, so many teen movies were either raunchy, male-centric comedies, or overly earnest dramas. Clueless proved you could have a tight, funny, female-focused story that was also smart and had real emotional depth. It was like Amy Heckerling was telling Hollywood, hey, girls have stories worth telling as well, and they're just as interesting, hilarious, and complex as the boys. It also resonated with a wide audience because of its warmth and positivity. Cher wasn't mean-spirited or shallow in the way teen girls are often portrayed on screen. Sure, she was a little clueless at first, hence the title, but she had a good heart, and the movie rewarded her for that. It was refreshing to see a character who was unapologetically feminine and fashionable, yet also kind and intelligent in her own way. Over the years, Clueless has only grown in stature. When it first came out, it was seen as a fun, quirky comedy. But as time has passed, people have come to realize just how smart it is, how it's not just about teenage drama, but also a subtle critique of privilege, consumerism, and class. And of course, the cultural footprint is huge. It's not just that Clueless is a beloved movie, it's part of the DNA of pop culture now. It paved the way for shows like Gossip Girl and movies like Legally Blonde that embrace similar themes of style, smarts, and self-discovery. It even inspired a spin-off TV series, stage adaptations, and countless references in other media. Today, Clueless is more than just a 90s classic. It's a film that feels timeless. Sure, the technology and the slang date it in the best way possible, but its themes of growing up, learning to see the world beyond yourself, finding your place in it, those are universal. That's why new generations keep discovering and loving this movie. And let's be real, when we talk about Clueless, we're talking about a movie that has it all. The laugh, the heart, the unforgettable characters, and the style. And it's no surprise that 30 years later, it's still considered one of the defining teen comedies of all time. As if there were any doubt. Alright, now for the film's significance. Why does it still matter? My opinion here, we're here, 30 years after its release. People still quote it, reference it, dress up as Cher for Halloween. That says a lot. This film has staying power, and I think a big part of that is how it blends humor with heart in such a natural, effortless way. Think about it. Clueless takes the high school comedy, which, let's be real, was already a crowded genre by 95, and somehow makes it feel fresh, modern, and way smarter than you'd expect. The characters aren't just funny, they're layered. Sure, Cher can seem shallow at first, but as the story unfolds, you realize there's so much more to her. She's got this mix of confidence and vulnerability that makes her incredibly relatable, even if you've never set foot in Beverly Hills or owned a closet with a built-in computer. And let's talk about the heart of the film. It's not just a comedy about high school cliques or makeover montages, though, let's be real, those are iconic. Clueless is about growth, empathy, and learning to see the world beyond your own bubble. Cher's journey isn't about becoming someone completely different, it's about becoming a better version of herself. She starts out thinking she knows everything, but by the end, she's learned how to listen, how to care, and how to give without expecting anything in return. Now, let's shift gears a little and talk about the powerhouse behind the camera, Amy Heckerling. This is a filmmaker who had already proven herself with Fast Times at Ridgemont High, which, by the way, is another high school classic, But Clueless, this was something entirely different. This became a cultural moment. And what I love about Heckerling's approach is that she never talks down to her audience. She respects her characters, she respects her story, and she respects the audience intelligence. And that's a big reason why this film continues to resonate with so many people across generations. And speaking of respect, can we just take a moment to appreciate how Heckerling captured the teen experience without making it overly dramatic or coming off cynical? A lot of coming-of-age movies from the 90s leaned into darker, angstier territory, which is fine. But Clueless did something different. It said, hey, being a teenager can be fun and ridiculous and messy, and that's okay. That's a perspective we don't see enough of, even now. Another thing that sets Clueless apart is how it balances being hyper-specific, but still universally relatable. Like, on one hand, it's so tied to its time and place, the 90s, Beverly Hills, the slang, the fashion. But on the other hand, the themes are timeless. Who hasn't felt out of their depth, like when Ty shows up at Bronson Alcott High, or struggled with realizing you've misjudged someone like Cher does with Josh? These are things we all go through, whether we're rocking a plaid miniskirt or not. And let's just talk about how Clueless looks. I mean, this movie is a visual feast. From Cher's outfits to the perfectly curated chaos of her closet, the fashion in this film isn't just eye candy, it's a storytelling tool. Cher's wardrobe isn't about showing off, it's about control. It's her way of presenting herself to the world, of saying, I've got this. And as her character evolves, you start to see little shifts in how she dresses, more subdued, more thoughtful. It's subtle, but it's brilliant. And beyond the clothes and the quips, there's this deeper layer of commentary that makes Clueless special. It's funny and satirical, sure, but never in a mean-spirited way. The film pokes fun at its characters' flaws, Cher's obliviousness, Dion's drama, Ty's insecurities, but it also loves them for those same flaws. It's a rare kind of balance where you can laugh at the ridiculousness of it all while still rooting for these characters to figure things out. And let's not forget how this movie redefined what a high school comedy could be. It's not just about parties and prom and who's dating who, though those elements are there. It's about relationships in all their forms. Friendships, family dynamics, romantic connections, and even self-love. There's this beautiful moment near the end when Cher admits she's been selfish and decides to make things right. Not because she wants to impress anyone, but because she genuinely just wants to be better. And that's a message we can all take to heart. So yeah, Clueless still matters because it is more than a movie. This is a snapshot of a moment in time, a love letter to adolescence, and a reminder that it's okay to not have it all figured out. It's okay to be a little clueless, as long as you're willing to learn, grow, and maybe even laugh at yourself along the way. Wow. What a fun trip back to the 90s. As we wrap up, let's talk about why Clueless deserves a spot as one of the best coming-of-age films ever made. For me, it's all about how effortlessly the movie balances humor, heart, and that little bit of satire. It's funny without being cruel, smart without being preachy, and endlessly quotable. Seriously, how many times have you caught yourself saying "as if" without even realizing it, especially if you're my age? Now, when it comes to my rating, I give Clueless a solid 8 out of 10. This is the kind of film you can revisit over and over, and it always holds up. I shared it with my 3 daughters, who are late teens, early 20s now, but they were in their mid-teens when they saw it, and they thought it was absolutely hilarious. Whether it's Cher's hilarious but genuine attempts at matchmaking, Ty's transformation, or the little moments that remind us how clueless we all were as teenagers, there's just so much to love. Plus, can we take a moment to appreciate how it nails the perfect balance of parodying teen culture while celebrating it? And don't forget the cast. Alicia Silverstone as Cher, Paul Rudd as Josh. I mean, they set the bar for likable romantic leads. Every time I watch it, I catch some new little detail in the performances or the dialogue that makes me appreciate it more. But what about you? I'd love to hear what you think. What's your favorite part of Clueless? Is it Cher's iconic debate about the Haitians? Ty singing Rollin' with the Homies? Or maybe it's the sheer joy of Paul Rudd's endless charm? Let me know, because as Cher would say, it's a totally Betty move a movie. So come on, talk to me. Let me know what you think. Drop me a message. Leave me a comment. You can find me on most of the social medias, Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky at Real Talk, X, Twitter, whatever, at Real Talk Pod, or email therealrealtalk@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you. What you liked, what you didn't like, maybe some recommendations that you'd like me to watch and talk about it another time. And next time, though, we're coming back with another coming-of-age movie, Booksmart. It's like the Gen Z cousin of Clueless. Fresh, hilarious, and full of heart. If you haven't seen it yet, now's the perfect time to check it out so you can join the conversation. And before we go, I just want to say thank you for tuning in and geeking out with me over these amazing films. It's always a blast diving into these stories, and I love that I get to do it with all of you. So if you enjoyed this, please make sure that you like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any episodes. And if you feel so up to it, leave me a review. Tell me what's going on. Talk to me about the movies that you like. Just anything to help keep us going and put a smile on my face. Now, alright, that's going to be it for today. Until next time, keep watching, keep loving, and keep those reels rolling. We'll talk to you soon.
Underneath the silver screen, gleam, gleam, talking reels and all their schemes. Dusty scenes and dreams unfold, stories told in shadows bold. Gritty plots and whispers tight, dim the streets and moonlight bright. We dissect the cinematic art, reel by reel we pull apart. The real talk where voices play with velvet words and starlit sway, reviewing tales both light and dark, classic films that leave a mark. Dive deep into celluloid night, critique the legends in our sight. Every frame a layer appeal, truth and intrigue are revealed. Fan the flames of black and white, the mystery dances in the night. Casablanca to the crime, in every score we find a rhyme. The real talk where voices play with velvet words and moonlight bright. With velvet world we pull apart, reel by reel we pull apart. The real talk where voices play with velvet words and starlit sway. With velvet worlds and starlit sway, reel by reel we pull apart. The real talk where voices play with velvet words and starlit sway, reviewing tales both light and dark, classic films that leave a mark.